Thanks, Andrew. Welcome. Happy Monday. This is, I don't know, 6, 7 times we've done this in the fall semester, so I appreciate your attendance. 2 things I want to cover today. A quick video that's focused on how do you build a vehicle. So I show that because you have projects you're working on, right? And some of you are probably in Grand Prix or EV Grand Prix or SAE, and you build one vehicle, right? How many of you thought about, how would I build 300,000 of these exactly the same? Maybe. But that's the life of manufacturing engineering. That's where I've spent the 35 of my 39 years with GM in manufacturing operations, because it's what you do with your hands and your heart and your head that all blend together. So a lot of people have a misconception or no knowledge at all, no conception on how a vehicle actually gets built. So we have a real quick 3-minute, I think it's 3 minutes, just an overview from our Lansing Delta Township plant on how a vehicle comes together. As advertised, pretty quick. And they build that quick. Lansing builds a vehicle. Anybody have an idea how often, how many seconds, how many minutes it takes to build a vehicle? Any plant? Anybody been in assembly plants? What's your guess? 20 minutes? Lansing builds one every 62 seconds. That's the line rate at which that plant runs. The Fort Wayne plant runs every 57 seconds. There's a full-size full-size pickup truck coming off a line up here in Fort Wayne, one of the faster ones in the nation or in the globe.
Is the other plant slower just because it's like a different vehicle?
Right, yeah. Everybody needs a truck. Everybody wants 2 trucks. You saw the Traverse and the Buick Enclave, still good products, still high sellers, but market demand will fluctuate what that tack time is.
So you don't like need to make it.
Yeah. But if you think about, we used to have a plant wheel, 47 seconds is the fastest plant I've been in, where you produce a vehicle off that final line every 47 seconds. So that's what I always try and leave with some students when we talk about project groups, is that it was easy, and it still is easy, relatively speaking, to build a go-kart. You know the reliability, you know all the systems you have to go through. You've got somebody on brakes, you've got somebody on propulsion, somebody on structure, somebody on the suspension, and all that comes together and you build a vehicle. Now you duplicate that, in Fort Wayne's case, 330,000 a year. Not the same one, but basically the same truck. And in Lansing's case, 280-ish SUVs. So that's the challenge when you look at where do you go from I want to design the product or a subset of the product to I want to design the system that manufactures that product, and where our houses of engineering start getting intertwined between manufacturing and the vehicle engineering side. We need engineers of high talent in both sides of that. We need strong leaders with technical knowledge in both sides of that, and we need it in all types of communities. So that's really the umbrella as to why General Motors feels EPICS is spot on with what we really look for when it comes to recruiting some high talent. You're all great engineers. You're at Purdue. You made a very wise choice to come to Purdue. Now you're making a wise choice on what engineering curriculum or related technical field, STEM-related field you're going to go into. So that's to be accomplished here at Purdue. You couldn't ask for a better place to do that. And then while you're here, getting this worldwide recognition of the EPICS program is another wise choice that all of you have made. To be leaders in that program is even one step further. So my hat's off to you for taking that on, and I'm sure you'll all do extremely well in it, as we've seen over the years. The second part of this is just to give you a topic that a lot of people stay away from because it's not easy, and it's candid feedback. Every time you're in a group, every time you're in a setting with more people, somebody takes the lead, be it elected, be it appointed, be it anointed, or be it informal. Somebody's going to take the lead of that. And somebody then has to step up to those members of that group, of that team, that need some feedback, all types of feedback. So I'd like to cover those with you, because if you can grasp that as a student leader of a project team or a club or a fraternity or a sorority or whatever you're trying to lead as a group, I don't think we get that message early enough in careers that it is extremely important to know how to provide feedback to all types of team members, as well as people working for you, as people that you will end up working for throughout your careers. So this is just a real quick review of candid and constructive feedback. So there's really 3 words there that draw this. What does it mean to you? What's feedback mean to somebody? Anybody? What do we mean when we say feedback? Different than electrical feedback in the system. Yes, sir. Very good. Anybody else? You all have a different understanding, a different definition of feedback. How about candid? What does candid mean? When you hear the word candid? Natural. Right then and there. Doesn't have to be rapid, doesn't have to be instantaneous, but candid in that some people will say, be frank with me. My name's not Frank, but be frank with me kind of response. That you want that honest, from the heart, with data type of feedback. And then constructive, it doesn't do any good for somebody to tell you you're pretty worthless. That doesn't do any good, right? What'd you get out of that? Anything? Can't go to work on anything. Can't try and improve anything. It has to be constructive. You're pretty worthless because you don't complete your assignments. They always seem to be missing. Now you've got something there that you can try and go to work on. You have to have some constructive part of that. So that's what this is trying to get across is feedback's very important. We'll end by saying feedback's a gift. It needs to be evaluated, it needs to be reviewed, and it needs to be prepared. And then candid, be truthful, be honest, base it on data, and then make it constructive so the enterprise or the individual can improve their effectiveness or the group can improve their productivity. I cover this because I have 39 years in General Motors. It's a wonderful company, but it could be Tony from GE, it could be Kevin from John Deere, it could be anybody that are my peers across the organizations. When it comes to where is it that candid and constructive feedback fits in your global behaviors. And if you look in the far right corner of this is our foundational leadership framework. This is what we appraise and make leaders in General Motors out of. Do you have the ability to have personal capability? Are you focused on results? Do you have the ability to have interpersonal skills? And do you lead change? Are those 4 pillars. But at the bottom, your foundation is your character. And you have one of the best people in the world, in the nation, in the globe, that's a Purdue grad in John Wooden. If you haven't read his book, that he deals chapter after chapter with the character of a person being first and foremost. I will recruit character before I recruit basketball skills is basically what he's saying. And he still has the record. If you're not familiar with John Wooden, being a Purdue grad, I'd encourage you to get familiar with him. He has a lot of great, great life lessons out there. He has since passed away, but the character builds that foundation. You are who your character represents you to be, and then you build those 4 pillars, and that puts the framework around leadership. And right in our leadership guide provides constructive feedback, honest critique of others, and provides that. So you can see it's important for us throughout the whole chain of executives. We have to understand that. We have to educate ourselves and our teams and all of our people that work for us along the way on how this fits in and how they have to be critical feedback experts along the journey. The same sort of thing when you look at the individual items within there, you can see the whole point of building effective teams, process management, managerial courage, all those things that fit under are you there where you need to be in your skill set. Our skill set evaluation from 2012, when we put this in our executive framework, is if you look at the 2 bottom names, I have to give credit to Lombardo and Eichinger. They come together to form the Lominger competency set. So if you're Googling competency sets, that then spills down to how you get interviewed all the way through the human resource practices. We will quiz you on not all of them. There's about 73 Lominger competencies in their research. We've narrowed that down to like 21 in manufacturing and something like 16 or 17-ish in the vehicle engineering side. A couple key things to think about on feedback. It's a very powerful concept if used properly. If used to be vindictive, if used to be revengeful, if used to be just blowing your steam off, it's not powerful at all. In fact, it's a negative. So hopefully from here you can see where if you are positive with your criticism and your constructive part is directed at a construct or a construct that needs help, you'll see it benefit you time and time again. If you're not clear and honest, you're basically just spinning air. If you cannot be honest with your team, then I would challenge you to think about being honest with yourself, and everybody has that opportunity to be honest with yourself when you look in a mirror, and practice your own feedback that way. But if you're not going to be honest with it, you're going to struggle in the leadership part of it. The second bullet up here is over time, many researchers will tell you that a lot of people just tell you what you want to hear. you know, you're a good person, you do extremely well, we like what you bring to the team, well done. And then what happens when that team gets a D on their project? Nobody grew, nobody gained anything because it was just rah, let's go team. There was nothing along the way that said, wait a minute, we're going down a detour, we're headed down the wrong road, we're going to derail this train, because there was not enough grasping and gripping of the situation to say we need to get this thing corrected, and we need to be honest about it, and then we need to be constructive about it. So if you continue to say what everybody wants you to say and what everybody wants to hear, because most people, when I said at the beginning it's not easy, most people are challenged when it comes time to say you're not doing your job as well as you should be. Your expectations are not being met. Our expectations are not being met. Your performance is not meeting expectations. You have to be able to accept that, and then you have to be able to deal with that. You all know from projects, if you have a 6-person project and you've got 3 doing all the work and 1 just nodding their head along the way and 2 no-shows, that's not a very fair distribution of work for a 6-person team. So hopefully you can use some of this in your teams, in your project base, as you go through all your labs and all your off-campus projects, and even in your classroom project teams. The last point is what I'd said before. If you can view feedback as a gift, I don't think anybody in here says, I don't like gifts, don't give me gifts. Everybody likes gifts. And if you think of feedback as a gift, then you might learn to accept it better. We don't normally ask people, hey, can you give me a gift? We don't usually ask that. But in this case, there's a lot of research out there that would say at times you want to ask for feedback. Knowing it's a gift, knowing that you have the wherewithal to accept it, you want to make sure you ask for that of any leader you're working on. What'd you think of this presentation? What'd you think of this write-up? What'd you think of my performance in this activity? And they choose whether they're going to give you that feedback. Good leaders will definitely give you that feedback. They may say, hey, we'll talk about it next Thursday when I have time to put it into some structure, and that's fine. But you really want to make sure that you understand when you get it, treat it like a gift, treat it like you wanted it, and treat it like it's going to be something that you'll be able to use. In general, you'll find really 3 major areas of feedback. You can have corrective feedback. Again, if you're headed down to where you're going to have a derailment, you want to make sure that you can provide some corrective behavior or corrective feedback that'll change that course of action. A lot of times if you don't get feedback and you only hear what people want you to hear, you're going to have some bad habits created because you don't know otherwise. Nobody's fed you any information that said, that's really a bad habit, the fact that you are not doing your own work on that research. That's a bad habit. And if nobody ever tells you that and you think, hey, that's okay, I'm getting by with that, I just continue that, at some point in time that's going to hit like a brick wall. So again, if you don't correct it, you'll end up down the road with a bad habit, you'll end up with wasteful activity. Developmental is something as you get into your careers, you're going to have to learn. You know your job, you're going to learn your job. You come in as a Purdue engineer, you're already well ahead of the average engineer, you're well ahead of most candidates for those jobs. But that's the job skill. How do you do in assigning those job skills to others and being responsible for those? That's the leadership part of it. You do your job extremely well, but now you have to rely on others to do that same job that you did in their way, in their methods, but you're still responsible for that. So you have to have some developmental feedback that goes with all of those. So are you looking to develop skills, or are you looking to build that trust, that you can trust that person or that team with what was otherwise your assignment not very long ago, but with your advancement, now you're the leader of that. So there's that whole chunk of developmental feedback. And then there's that reinforcing feedback, and I would wager a bet that most of you are on that end that sit in this room that are involved in the EPICS program. You chose to be in this program because it's in your heart and it's in your head. And that reinforcement sometimes is very critical. because you're making a lot of decisions, you're impacting several groups and chains of people and communities. And those decisions are yours or your team's, and you sometimes just need that reinforcement, that re-encouragement that that's an okay decision. We appreciate the way you went about doing that and how you were inclusive of everybody on the team. That's equally important. Not a lot of construct there to work on, but because there's representation of the fact that you did a great job in the decision or in the performance of whatever that project was, that's where you want to acknowledge your contributions and encourage those good behaviors. So 3 buckets. You can find research that will break down types of feedback a whole lot more than this and get into the minutiae on any one of them. But in basic application, I would wager that most all of your feedback over your time is going to fit in one of those 3 main buckets. So you can see that it's always useful no matter which type it is based on the situation. And again, as a strong leader, you're going to be able to grasp that situation and make that decision. Everybody knows what a normal distribution looks like, right? Been there, done that thousands of times. When you're looking at performance and you have a normal distribution, what's your whole goal? What's your umbrella view? What are you trying to do with that distribution? Quantify it. So you've quantified it, now you've got a normal what if it's grades? What if it's grade distribution in a Physics 152 class? What do you want that distribution to do? Shift it. You always want to shift that towards the goal end, towards the A end if it's a grade, through better quality if it's in the quality and reliability engineering world. It's better output, it's better safety. Whatever it is, improve it by shifting that normal distribution. No different here when you're working on corrective or developmental or constructive feedback. Your goal is to provide that feedback so that that individual or that group of people you're providing feedback to can improve their performance with something that you've presented to them. That's your point of presenting it, not because you just check it off your list and I'm required to do that. It's because I want the enterprise to move forward. I want the enterprise to be bigger, better, and more efficient, more productive, whatever that goal is that you're trying to shift that normal distribution towards. So when you look at a normal distribution, well, it's already on here because I put them all together on one slide instead of bringing them through click by click. Marginal performers, what type of feedback? This is real challenging. If you can read, you already got the answer. When you have marginal performers, people that are not performing to your expectations, students that are not performing to the professor's expectations, what type of feedback do you really need? Corrective, because you're heading the wrong direction. If you're a solid performer, then you're doing everything that you're expected to do at basically an average, center of the curve performance. What do you want what type of feedback would you want to see there? What would you use if you're the professor or if you're the project lead? Developmental. It's already on the answer's already on there in the bottom. You want to develop those people to be better performers. So they've consistently performed at the average. You want to shift them forward towards, in this case, you're right, on better productivity, better performance. Give them developmental feedback. And then for those exceptional performers, because you all have those on your normal distribution, that's that reinforcing. That's nice job, way to go, the decision was good, the outcome was even better. So what you see here is the 3 types kind of split out when you're looking at how you're going to talk about the performers in your organization, be it a project team, a classroom, a team, a work team, or an organization that you're involved with. Whatever it is that you're leading, you still have that responsibility and that ultimate goal to shift that performance. And then if you look, the answer to the first question in the upper right is, what's the purpose of all this feedback? Is to raise the performance of all the employees. Because what happens if you don't bring the marginal performers along? What's that curve look like? Who's the statistics whiz? What's a normal distribution do if you leave trailers behind? Your beta n gets a whole lot further away from the mean. Then what happens? It's skewed, right? And if it's skewed, you have to waste a lot more time bringing that group of marginal performers forward. If you can shift the whole curve by being multitasking enough that you can provide all types of feedback to all types of people on that team, you have a much better chance of moving that entire enterprise forward. If you end up with groups at the very end that are not getting the proper feedback and are not developing, that gets too far skewed, and you spend an ungodly amount of time back here where now you're basically coming to a halt on the progress of moving forward. So no different than any of your problems in statistics. That's applied to a feedback form from a leadership standpoint. And then bottom line, that character of that feedback varies depending on the level of performance. So you're not going to walk into a 30-person engineering team and give everybody the same exact feedback. You know better than that. That doesn't happen. But unfortunately, you run into people that never understood that. And they think by telling you something, by telling you something, by telling you something, and it happens to be the same thing, I've done my job. You may have done your job, check it off, but you haven't done anything in regards to the development of the individuals on the team and the advancement of that team's progress. So if anything, I would say when you jump in, understand how your leader's viewing you as a member of your team and ask for that feedback. And then when you get to that point that you are leading a team, wherever it is, on campus, off campus, at your work site, wherever it is, internship, co-op, full-time, I will still tell you that I will tell you that this is going to apply. The more you know about how the feedback is being presented to you, the better you can put it into some useful manner, and then you'll get to do the same thing with your teams and quickly see how that whole team effort can be much more than the individuals within it. So that's the skewed part of it. If you don't give feedback to everybody, your exceptional performers are going to feel, well, they must not recognize what I do. And you have a very strong chance, if you do not provide feedback to your all-stars, your rock stars, your water walkers, you're going to also risk the chance that they're going to be looking elsewhere if you're not appreciating their work, their performance, their leadership. So you can't just focus on that back group. You have to, as a strong leader, bring that whole group. So again, all three at the same time, but all three different based on where they fit on the performance curve. Just a couple words on constructive versus destructive. I've always titled this constructive feedback because, again, you're all going to probably end up working with or for or in the presence of someone who's basically a yeller. Because why do people yell? Why do people scream? Why do people get out of control? You ever been out of control? You ever screamed? Nobody screamed? Nobody's yelled at somebody on your team? Why? Why do you do that? Stress? Up against a deadline? You've let it build up that you just don't like her, and now it's time because she just said something, did something that kind of tipped you over the edge. If all you do is yell and scream, if that's all you do from a feedback standpoint, you might be loud and proud, they say, but that's not effective. Would you want that if that's your professor just yelling at you for that grade on that test or for that project or that homework, whatever it is? That's not going to help you, nor is it from a leadership standpoint. It's different, destructive feedback versus passion in what you're doing.